So let's talk about the first 8 episodes of Kaiju number 8. Now before the season actually started, I had zero expectations to the entire show. I know why I said show twice, but get over it. It wasn't because I thought it was going to be bad, but it was simply due to the fact that I couldn't care less about the next big shonen, and the manga scores confirmed my suspicions, as it was at the time sitting around 7.9, 7.95, which isn't that much of a good thing since my anime list users usually get their manga scores pretty right. At the same time, I still think that Gachakuta, which is currently sitting around 7.9, is a probably 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. Sorry, I really think that it is going to be the next big shonen when it gets its inevitable production. Now, setting all this aside, let's talk about the show itself. First, we have plot. And in plot, I'm going to be basically talking about the entire story and how it's structured so far. So let's get into it. I feel like this is one of the most generic plots I've ever seen in a long time. In the beginning, I thought that the show was actually going to be something different, and we're going to have our new kaiju anime that's going to be tackling some quote-unquote dark themes. But after watching the first episode, I was just let down. Everything was just average in my opinion. To be honest with you, the only reason, in my opinion, Kaiju number 8 is currently sitting at a relatively high score, which is 8.2 on my anime list, is because of its production. And I never really want to use this term because so many of my favorite shows, whether it's Frieren, Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, or no, not Attack on Titan, but you get what I'm trying to say, they are carried by the production. And if we were to read the manga, we wouldn't be surprised by the plot, and it's going to be average for us. So in the end, I feel like everything was a bit predictable. However, one thing that I debated with my friend when episode 1 came out was the fact that I felt since Kafka had his kaiju abilities, I thought he was going to be using it in order to ace the exams, which didn't happen. I thought the build-up was pointless, since if he had gotten his powers, he would just use it to cruise through the test, but in the end he didn't. So that's a good thing, but that's the only thing I could praise about the plot. Spoilers ahead. When episode 7 aired, I was like, let's go, we're actually facing some danger. And I called my friend and I was like, if they kill Ichikawa and the pink haired guy, which I'm going to be talking about the pink haired guy, I thought that was going to be helping the plot tremendously, since we never really have big shonen shows kill off some of their main characters early on during the show. What the hell was that? But again, when episode 8 came out, it disappointed me, but it also gave me hope for episode 9 and the final few episodes of the show, because I think now that we have the new subplot of the operators or officers, whatever they're calling them, now that we had that subplot of Kafka trying to keep his identity hidden, it's going to help the show stay interesting, at least. But enough rambling. Let's move on to my favorite thing about the entire show, which was the subplot that they introduced in episode 5 or 6, I'm not really sure. But it was basically having an infiltrator or the enemy infiltrate our main character's base, and it keeps the viewer engaged because we know that there is an enemy between the main characters, but the main characters don't know, and it's honestly one of my favorite tropes. It keeps a sense of thrill, but that's my highest praise for the entire show, which brings me to my next point. My least favorite thing about the entire show is the characters. I feel like they all play into a certain trope, and the biggest disappointment of the entire show is Kafka. When I realized that Kafka himself is a 32-year-old, I was like, finally we have a shonen show that isn't about a 16-year-old teenager, which, by the way, shonen means, or it kind of means, a young boy. A funny thing is that one of my biggest criticisms of Windbreaker is that the characters act way too old for themselves, and they are debating philosophies. Wherein Kaiju 8, the main character is old, but he acts like a bloody teenager. So I'm like, if we were just to flip the scenarios, it would have perfectly worked for the show. And I feel like the comedy is just the most basic anime humor you could ever see, which is the complete opposite with Bokyaku Battery or Oblivion Battery, my favorite show this season, which I'm going to make a video about, so stay tuned for that. But in the end, I feel like the characters absolutely have nothing about them aside from their tropes that they're trying to play, or the mangakas, aside from the archetypes the mangaka has assigned to them, and they basically fall flat on their face. You know, when the yellow-haired tsundere showed up, I felt completely enraged at the fact that she was bloody entitled, and I hated it. I really did. I despise entitled brats. I despise being looked down upon. No matter who you are, you should never look down upon anyone. However, when we heard about her backstory, it kind of made sense for me. I still despise it, but it kind of made sense for me. And she's slowly growing over me since Kafka ended up saving her in episode 5, I think, or episode 4. But in the end, like I said, none of the characters appealed to me. None of them even come close to being a 6 out of 10 character. You know, usually with shows that are shitty with characters, I'm looking at you, 86. At least they have a decent protagonist. But everyone in this show, it just feels archetypical, if that's a word. But you know, let's move on to the production, which is probably the best thing about the show. From the trailer, we were all thinking that, oh my god, we're gonna have 2D kaiju. But then episode 7 came out, and we were like, and my suspicions were confirmed, because there was no way the show was going to be able to animate that many kaiju in one scene, which is disappointing, to be honest, because the first 6 episodes were really well done. Despite the animation not being really good, it was still better than CG, because CG, in my opinion, just breaks the immersion if it's not well done. But my second favorite thing about the show was the voice acting. To be honest with you, like I said, I'm going to be talking about pink-haired guy, who, if you didn't guess, let me just show you 2 scenes, and you'd be surprised about how similar they are, but just the different characters themselves. And it brought a smile to my face. It was in episode 8, and I honestly loved it. So just watch this.
なんなんだよ。なんでそんな奴と戦えんだよ。クソが気に入らねえ。簡単に俺を追い抜いていきやがって。気に入らね何度でも君が助かる未来にたどり着くまで絶対折れねえから。
As you saw, it was in fact the voice actor of Takemichi, whom I'm sorry, but I cannot recall because I do not have a script and I'm just going off of my thoughts. But it was honestly beautiful to see the small comparison between the 2 situations. But you know, it was wholesome to me. To me, at least, I enjoyed it. Next, I want to talk about a certain minor aspect of the show, which was the dimming. You know, with modern anime right now, we have a trend of dimming so many of the bright colors, which I bloody despise. I honestly just dislike it so much, because with all due respect to anyone with an epilepsy disorder or disease, forgive me for butchering this, but it is so simple for studios to just release 2 versions of an episode and have epilepsy in brackets next to the epilepsy dimmed episode. But it just ruins some of the scenes. Like, it completely cuts off all immersion, and I just feel like, and it's like all the hard work that went into that shot and all the colors that went into that shot just felt wasted, and it just thrown down the drain. It was the same case with Jujutsu Kaisen, which in my opinion was one of the worst things about the show, and one of the reasons why some fights just were ruined, just blatantly ruined. And I'm like, why? Just why? Thankfully though, episode 7 had the brightest colors on screen. That wasn't dim, and episode 8 as well had just a few dims, but the rest of the show at the beginning, it just felt so unnecessary, and it just doesn't work for the show at all. It makes me hate the show even more. But yeah, let's go over to another good point, or good part of the production aspect. When I was watching the trailer, or rather when I first saw episode 1, I was like, these backgrounds remind me of something, and I couldn't place my finger on what it actually reminded me of. Then I watched probably Pretension's video about the entire first 3 episodes, and he confirmed my suspicion. The same background artist who worked on Dorohedoro worked on Kaiju 8, and it just, I don't know, it felt like I'm watching a lot of shows, and it makes me feel like an anime veteran, even though I've only watched 140 seasons. And it makes me feel like an anime veteran to be able to pick out certain production aspects that I can, and, instead of knowing a certain animator or knowing a certain voice actor or knowing a certain studio, I know a certain background artist, and it made me feel like maybe I know a thing or two about anime. But finally, the thing that pissed a lot of people off, which I didn't have a problem at all with, the character design. I felt like the character design was perfect. It wasn't too detailed, which works in favor of the animators. It makes some of the animation scenes just much easier to animate, and I felt like it was something new. Despite we having such detailed background, we have a kind of stylistic approach to doing these characters, which I liked. Maybe that's a minor thing that I need to praise, but the show is filled with so many things that I didn't like, so I felt like I might point this out. Overall, I will say this. When watching an anime, I always like to give my scores during the final episode or when I finish the final episode. However, after episode 2 and 3, I just went on my anime list and just gave Kaiju number 8 a 6 out of 10. I really hope it becomes better, because honestly, every episode is better than the previous one. And I genuinely believe that episode 9 is probably going to be the best episode this entire season, simply because we're probably going to get that fight scene that shonen shows are known for. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, let me know if I should make a video about animes, a video about all the anime shows that I've watched this season, because I would genuinely want to talk about 2 specific shows, or 3, these being Windbreaker, Train to the End of the World, and my favorite show, probably this entire year, Bokyaku Battery. Have a good day everyone, and God bless.